Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. I'm Den Herring and my channel is FishDen365 and this is Top Water Tuesday, and today we're going to be talking about prop baits. Come on, let's go. Okay, so prop baits, what is that? It's a topwater lure with propellers on it. Different various topwater lures with propellers on it. And the prop bait is, as far as my recollection goes, is the first topwater lure I've ever fished. I can't think of any topwater I've fished before a particular prop bait, which was known, I believe, as the Rebel Spin Minnow. And I might have one back here on the wall somewhere. Just looking quickly. I don't see it. Oh yeah, here it is. This one's been modified by my dad. But this is what it looked like. This is a white one with like a skeleton pattern, bone pattern on the side. The modification is somewhere here. My dad did something that it looks a little different there. I'm not sure exactly what, but I caught a lot of fish on this bait. I just found one on eBay for $30. I'm thinking about buying it. It's a different color. It's a silver sides, whitish bottom, and a purple back. And this particular lure, it made a sound, a specific sound in the water. You know, all these spinners are a little different. They spin a little differently. They have a different sound to them depending on what make and model. And boy, you know, I caught a lot of fish back in the day just reeling this on a steady pace back through the water. Just a steady reeling in, but it had a chirping noise to it, a very specific sound, and I really think that's what attracted the fish on this thing. But that's what we're here to talk about today. Prop baits, how to use them, what's available out there, how to retrieve them. And so, you know, when I think of a prop bait today, the one I really think, you know, as the standard is this one by Lucky Craft. It's called the Kelly J. It stands for Kelly Jordan. This is a bait I believe he helped Lucky Craft design. I put this rear hook on there. It's a feather hook. I just changed it out to a Gamakatsu. That's always what I do, as you know if you've been watching these videos. But this one is a really high quality lure, right? It's got the eyes. It's got spinners that are really, really good, that spin really freely and really easily. Top quality finish on there. That one really looks like a bluegill, or it could even pass for a perch. Really, really nice bait. But this is an old school bait. It goes way back in time. You know, you had wooden baits. Here's a homemade wooden one that a friend of mine made for me some years ago. It's got some good spinners on it. I have it taken apart because it's got that hook holder that I don't like, the kind that a fish could wedge off. This one is a head and dying flutter. This is one of my favorite ones. I like the dying flutter a lot, but Heddon uses that same goofy hook holder design on this where, you know, unless you put a couple of split rings on there and let it hang down further, the fish could wedge off because this doesn't move freely. So again, I do a modification on this. I pull this off, and in the center I'll drill a hole and put a little screw eye in there, and then put a split ring on it, and then put the hook on there. And then the hook can move around freely. And I've done this with other Heddon lures like the Heddon Zara Spook. It's the same modification, so I'll include it here in case you'd like to see it. It applies to this lure as well. This is the Heddon Dying Flutter. Smithwick had another very similar lure called the Smithwick Devil's Horse. That's very popular, especially down in Florida. This one's a good one here. This one my dad modified. The spinners are not the original spinners, but this one was called a shad rack, another wooden bait. Some of them are plastic, like the Heddon one here. The Dying Flutter is plastic, but this one's wood. So, you know, they all have a little bit of a different action, a different sound to them. If you can find one of these Rebel Spin Minnows, I would encourage you to buy it, because this thing is a very good lure. It catches fish very well. I want to get some more original ones if I can. Back to the Kelly J one. So, you know, again, you got the really nice shape here, and this one comes with very quality propellers. And a prop bait, it's really all about the propellers. That really is what defines how well that bait's going to work for you. And there's various retrieves that you do, and there's different things you can do with the propellers that can make the bait work differently or allow you to work the bait differently. And it's important to know some of that. So let's go over that now. First of all, it's a topwater lure, so I like to use a topwater rod, a rod that's designed for topwaters. I use a light and tough topwater rod designed by Daiwa years ago. It's a great topwater rod. And I'll use 20-pound braid, and I will use a leader, at least 2 rod lengths long, of 17-pound test monofilament leader. Usually it's Berkeley Trilene XT, and I like XT for this because it's a stiffer leader and it's less likely to get wrapped around the propellers on these baits. I also use a snap, so I'll tie the leader to a snap, tie it onto my bait, and I'm good and I'm ready to go. So that's the equipment that we use. So let's talk about some of the retrieves on these baits. So, one retrieve is just to throw it out there, and when it lands in the water, you let the ripples subside. You just let it sit out there a little while. And sometimes just letting it sit, a fish will just come up, and sometimes it'll just slowly suck it in. You'll just see it disappear right off the surface. And other times they'll come up and it'll be more like a toilet flush. They just smash it. You just never know. So that's one way to catch fish on it. After the ripples subside and everything is settled down, one thing you can do is just retrieve it straight back. You just a steady retrieve straight back to you. And that works sometimes. That I have found over the years, it really depends on the sound the lure makes. Some are better than others at that. Like I said, this Rebel spin minnow was really good at just straight back to you. I caught a lot of fish doing that on that bait. Not all of them though. Not all of them work the same way. So another way to do it is you throw the bait out there and you let it sit, you let the ripple subside, and then you rip your rod forward. So now you're ripping the bait very fast. Rip. And so you want to have that bait move 4 to 8 feet along the surface of the water. And as it does it, it just churns the water because those spinners are turning. And it goes, and then you reel in the slack and do it again. Reel in the slack, let it sit while you're reeling in that slack, and do it again. And oftentimes that will trigger a strike. That ripping noise almost sounds like a bass feeding, so I think it gets their attention. And if they look up and they see it out there, sometimes they'll rush it and strike it. Another way is to throw the bait out there. Again, let the ripples subside and just move it ever so slightly, just a little bit of a twitch. Just twitching your rod tip to make the spinner spin just a little bit, so it looks like a little something injured. And this one is good for that, right? Because it has a bait fish profile. It looks just like a bluegill. It's sitting on the surface. It looks like a fish on the surface already. And then you move it a little bit. The spinners move a little bit. It makes a little bit of a commotion, just a slight bit of commotion. And so it looks like it's hurt. It's not going anywhere quickly. And so the bass can come up there and just suck it in. And so that's another really good way to retrieve this bait. Now, there's some things you can do with the propellers that you should be aware of too. You can get the propellers to do different things. One is if you bend them towards you. So see how these propellers they're concave a little bit already. This one's straighter so that it makes a more of a churn. It's designed that way. But you can bend these back a little bit, and then that'll allow you to move the bait more quickly through the water. You can just rip it through and it'll move faster that way through the water. And the other thing you can do is do the opposite. You can straighten these spinners, and then it won't move nearly as far for the same amount of commotion because you have more water resistance when they are in that position. Another thing you can do with these dying flutters and this homemade lure, and even the Smithwick Devil's Horse, you can do this well too. You can fish it backwards. In other words, you could take this hook off here, put it on the front, tie it here, and now the spinners are they're actually not concave anymore, but they're shaped the opposite way. And so, but they'll still spin when you rip it. But now the bait will hardly go anywhere for each turn of that spinner. So you can keep the bait in a smaller area longer this way and still make some commotion to attract the fish. And that's the reason why you might want to do that. Reverse the bait, utilize the spinners so that, let's say you're throwing this bait around a large stump, or maybe you have a row of stumps along a creek channel, and you want to specifically have this bait sit near that stump because you found that the bass are relating to those stumps and you're catching them there. Well, one way to keep the bait near the stump longer is to rearrange the spinners. In other words, widen them, or just flip the bait around and tie it that way so that it's actually going this way instead of this way. And so what that allows you to do is make a commotion, but the bait won't move very far when you do it. And so you have it in front of that piece of cover, like that stump, longer, giving the fish more of an opportunity to come up and grab the lure. So a couple of different ways, you can really get in the go down a rabbit hole with these kind of lures. I have to be honest, it's not my favorite type of topwater lure. But when I saw this tonight, or when I was thinking about doing this video, I thought, you know what, I ought to fish this some more, because boy, when I used to throw this bait and just use that steady retrieve I told you about, there was something about the sound this thing made that they really liked. And I'd like to experiment with that a little bit more to see if that's still true today, 30 years later, 30, 40 years later. Because that's when I was fishing this thing, way back in the late 70s and early 80s. And I caught a lot of bass on this lure. Have to play with it again. It's been a while since I've thrown it. But again, it's overall, it's not a lure that, it's not the first thing I reach for. With today's horny toads and a lot of these other types of topwater lures, I've kind of gotten away from these. But they do catch fish, and they do have a time and place. And that specific situation I told you about, a stump or a piece of cover, maybe a standing tree in the water, that's when these kinds of things can shine. The other time they shine is when the bluegills are spawning. And that's what this one was really designed to do. This Lucky Craft is designed to mimic a bluegill. So what happens when the bluegills are spawning, they're in shallow water, and the bluegills have a tendency of eating the bass's eggs when the bass are spawning. And so the bluegills spawn then, and when they do, the bass maraud on the bluegills. They don't go after their eggs, they just eat the bluegills. So when you have a bluegill spawn, if you're throwing this in real shallow water and ripping it around and letting it sit, it's a good time to catch bass. This has worked on some of the local lakes that I fish here, where the bluegill spawn has drawn the bass in shallow, because the bluegills are spawning shallow, and you can catch them that way. And this is a great way to do it. The other time to fish this lure is after the bass spawn, when you have a lot of little fry in the water. Something about the noise these spinners make when you rip this lure attracts bass and catches fish during that time of year as well. Well, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please give me the thumbs up. If you've been watching my videos and getting something out of them, if you're learning some things, if you haven't done so already, it's time to subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel. That lets me know that what I'm doing is useful, and it motivates me to continue to make more videos, which I'd like to do. So please subscribe. Remember, we're certified, bassified. We're all about the art and science of fishing, right? We talk about the science. The science is knowing something about the nature of the fish you're fishing for, whether that's largemouth, smallmouth, stripers, understanding the nature of that fish. And then the art is figuring out a presentation or a method for catching those fish under certain circumstances. That's what this channel is about. That's what we like to talk about here. I hope you're enjoying it. I know I enjoy bringing these videos to you, and I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to comment. And as always, may God bless your fishing endeavors.